All right, I carried this all the way to New York City. I think it's that important. Okay, so this is the edition for 2000 to 2002, and what we would have had, like I told you, is 3 pieces of paper with, and not even very much print on those pieces of paper. To me, that's an indication of how much our government in the United States values women's lives. And here we can open it and look at the table of contents, and there's, in the section on direct deaths, there's a chapter dealing with thrombosis and thromboembolism, another chapter on preeclampsia and eclampsia, one on hemorrhage, one on amniotic fluid embolism, early pregnancy deaths, genital tract sepsis, anesthesia, so forth. I mean, each chapter goes into a good deal of detail, and so what this system that you've had for so many years there in the UK allows for is confidential inquiry, accurate reporting. They claim 97% accuracy. Also, that there's it would be unthinkable, as I understand it, to lie on any official documents. For instance, a death certificate. In the United States, it's quite easy to lie. In fact, it's the habit in many, many places, and we simply have no idea what our real maternal death rate is here. You need to take care of this system so that you don't get like us, because in some ways your system is becoming more like ours, but you do have this, at least you have a feedback system that has its effect really on the ethics of your practitioners in the UK, because it's not assumed that dishonesty is necessary to continuing your job or the success of your hospital or place of work as it is here. So we envy you this, and we hope you take good care of it so you keep it. And you student midwives need to keep track of what's going on with what's now CMAC, I think. And then I think it's recently, I read on the internet, it's changed to CEMACE, C-E-M-A-C-E. So study up and treasure this, and don't let it slip. Don't let it become, I hear it's now a private charity. There could be danger in that. Okay. Now, a little more about the quilt. Why did I start the quilt? Because I want us to have this. It keeps women safer if you have an impartial inquiry into any time a woman dies from pregnancy-related causes. We got to know why. We got to know what she died from. We have to know whether her death could have been prevented or not. And then, if it could have been prevented, we need to know how not to do that again. So the lessons from, say, one place where it happened could then be learned at all the other places where women give birth, and recommendations can be made, so you can find out what are the areas where your training might be weak, where your administration might be weak, where your outreach or your public information is in need of strengthening. The quilt. Why a quilt? Because if you have an unpleasant truth that you want people to get their minds around, you might have to do something that will seduce them to look at what you want them to look at. A quilt is something that's beautiful. It has loving, high level of attention in the artistry of the needlework. They have, each block has a woman's name. Each block is about that big. And her age and where she lived and died, and sometimes how many children she had. Sometimes the cause is given, sometimes we don't even know what it is. I've gathered the names of about 360 women, and they died, but most of them since the year 2000, but since the year 1982, which was the time in the United States when our maternal death rate was at its lowest. That's right, you heard me say that. We're higher now. We have a higher death rate for mothers now than we had in 1982. And remember, in both cases, we have a flawed number. We have one that's less than the real number, and we'll never know what the real number is until we have good ascertainment. So it's political, because it's not the kind of thing that one hospital is going to be able to fix, or one doctor or one midwife is going to be able to fix. It's going to mean the people have to rise up and say, no, we want our mothers to be as safe as they are in, there are actually 40 countries at least in the world who have lower maternal death rates than we do in the United States. And if we're ever going to change that, an essential first step is we have to count right. So that's what the quilt's about. Each panel is about 5 meters long and about 1 meter high. And each panel has 20 names in it. So, we're happy that Amnesty International has taken an interest in the project. And so if you look at the website for Amnesty International USA, you can find out more about it. And there's a very important publication called Deadly Delivery that you can access there. So I invite you to look at all that stuff. Here's one question. How did I feel when I had a maneuver named after me, and that's Midwife Mummy? I had a little bit of turmoil about what the maneuver should be called, because the teacher in me wanted to call it the all-fours maneuver because it tells you what to do. Because I didn't invent it, I heard about it from Guatemalan midwives. I thought about the Guatemalan midwives maneuver. And then because the question actually came up, given to me by a co-author who was an obstetrician, and he was helping me for the first time because, at the time I didn't have a license yet. So the idea that an unlicensed midwife could be published as lead author in an obstetrical journal was just a no-go. So working with him was a necessity if I wanted to get it in there at all for doctors. He asked me what we should call it, and at that point I thought I should probably follow the tradition of putting my name on it so that it could be traced back to me, so that you could find it more easily in the literature, since I was the one that sort of popularized it. So I may at some time want to rebrand it. I'm thinking about that. But it was nice. It was gratifying, and I got a few invitations to speak at teaching institutions from obstetricians who wanted to know if Dr. Gaskin would be able to talk to them. And I think I might not have got those invitations if they knew I was a midwife. Hopefully that will change someday.
Okay, I'll move it down. Okay. You can keep going.
I'll keep going? Okay. All right. Sexy Mummy asks, have any of the births you have attended in the past held a lasting effect on the way you conduct your practice? Oh, yes. I would say a couple of the births in the first 10 really did that. One of them was the birth where it was a first-time mother, and I was doing a lot of vaginal exams in those days with the permission of the moms, because they wanted me to learn how to do it, and I was learning how labor went. So the usual course of labor would be, I would check, and 4 centimeters would become 5, it would become 6, would become 8, you should start pushing. But in this case, she went to 7 fairly quickly, and there she stayed. She stayed there for 12 hours, and I thought, what's different? Because it was just it was a hard 7. It was an unyielding 7, and I thought, what's different about her? And I kept going back to my little obstetrics handbook, and didn't say anything about that. And I've been told, if the mother's vital signs and those of the baby are fine, which they were, you're okay. So at the end of 12 hours now, we were really tired, both of us, all of us, and the sun was coming up. There was a knock at the door, and this cheerful voice of a friend said, had Sheila told you about her mother yet? And I just felt this goosebumps all over when that was said. And I invited a friend in, and she went to the head of the bed where the mother was sitting and put her arm around her and explained to me that the laboring mother had been adopted and had confided in her that she had thought that her biological mother had died giving birth to her. And I realized when she said that our mother was afraid of dying. Having the secret come out changed the energy, and she quickly dilated to fully and was able to push her baby out. So that really taught me. I had read Dick Reed's Childbirth Without Fear before, but that made it so real that fear can have that power. And I realized a lot of my job would be to relieve women's fears and try to speak those sort of deep fears and worries that would help them in labor. A few births later, we had another situation, and I've written about this one in Spiritual Midwifery and in the Guide to Childbirth as well, where long labor, again, locked at 7 centimeters, just plateaued there, and it only ended when the incomplete marriage ceremony that they had devised for themselves was redone. You know, we had a redo on the marriage ceremony where vows of commitment were said, and then the dilation to fully could go on, and the baby was soon born. So yeah, absolutely, those 2 births in the first 10 had a very strong lasting effect on my practice.